Look, here's Vine popping up. I haven't seen the Vine version, to be honest. I've not been the greatest fan of Vine recently, but apparently Alex Belfield has caved in and claimed that he lied. So seems like Belfield is a liar after all, unfortunately. So anyway, here we go. So look, this is what happened on our ancient site when they knocked the pub down. They weren't supposed to knock it down, and then they built it bigger than they were supposed to. They don't have authority, permission, or a right to do it, even if they own it, right? Yet a breach of planning is apparently not a criminal offence. Breaching the planning results in a fine from the council, which they enforce through the magistrates' court or the civil court, whichever, if they don't pay it. Although magistrates' court, you can hear civil cases in there, but I'm not sure if the council go to the county court or not for the order or the magistrates' court, but it doesn't really matter. It's a fine. That means that because they don't get criminal charge and they only get a fine, that if you're very rich and you've got a hell of a lot of money, like these contractors who, and then the companies that buy them all and invest in the contractors, like BlackRock Vanguard, literally, if you just want to, go around on Google and look for properties on Google Maps, like you're looking for hamburgers. Oh, I'll have that. Look on the menu, what's around. Look around Google Maps. Oh, there's a nice property there. I'll buy that. If buying a building to you is like going through a McDonald's drive-through and buying burgers, I'll have an ice cream and a Häagen-Dazs. If you're like Dragon's Den and you use Google Maps to, look around, what's around this, I'll have a look around, what's for sale, you're flicking through eBay, I'll buy this, I'll buy that, right? If you are, Dragon's Den or BlackRock Vanguard, you literally, you can literally skip through Google Maps like you're looking through eBay and buy what you want. And then, regardless of whether the council give you permission or not, once you own it, bought it, it's mine now. But yet, you don't have the right to do what you want to a building without permission. You don't have the authority, you don't have consent, and you don't have a right to do it, even if you own it. That is what the whole point of the law is, for these reasons, to preserve the community. Hold on. Try finding the other videos for it. There's another pub, actually, that's crooked that didn't get knocked down. But I'm just trying to find the main story that... there's quite a few stories on this. But the first one that I saw was the woman crouching down. This is it anyway. Look, Crooked House pub fire being treated by arson as police. Being treated by arson. But I don't think the Criminal Damage Act doesn't cover arson. I don't think the Criminal Damage Act covers arson. It treats arson separately anyway. So... the thing with the Criminal Damage Act is if you don't have a right, privilege or interest, then it is regarded as criminal damage. So if you've got planning permission, you have a right, privilege or interest to demolish something. Even if you own it, like, you own your own sofa, if you wanted to pull your own sofa to pieces, you could do. Like, if you wanted to customise it or whatever, it's your house and property, unless you're renting it. So, this is the point. So, where's the other story? There was one with a... same story anyway. You can find this story all over the internet. Apparently they're going to make them rebuild it. The version that I saw, I don't know why it's not popping up now. Oh, there it is. That's the first... that's the 5 News one. So I saw the 5 News version of it first. This 5 News version. So, apparently, I don't think that the council would have got the police involved. Because the thing is, with our ancient site, which has got it had a pub on it, a very old 17th century pub. And someone bought it, but it was a deal with the council. It was sort of like, it was a very strange deal with the council apparently owning the land, and they contracted it out to these tandies, and then they were only supposed to make modifications to it, not demolish the whole thing. And then they demolished the whole thing, and then they didn't even build the building that they put planning permission in for. They built a completely different building. And then someone called them on it, and they had to stop. And then but yet, this must have been with intent. You can't do that without an intent, right? But a planning breach, when you do that, you are breaking planning. You're breaking the planning regulations. You don't have permission. But that is regarded as and treated as a fine from the council and government. You don't have a right to demolish an entire building, right? A breach of planning is a fine, right? It's not a criminal offence, yet the whole community, the whole village, preserving the look and presence of the building. I don't know why this is popping up. It's got signal on from that Stop Cop City app. You know, this is it. Now, there is something to do with arson. But the thing is, once you've burned, even if you did arson and completely burn the inside of a building out, why does it even matter whether you burned it all out or not? If you're going to demolish the whole thing completely and totally into rubble. But then again, I suppose you could root through the rubble, and if it hadn't all been completely incinerated to char, you might be able to, if there was anything valuable in there, like a piece of pottery or, a little bit of fabric from a sofa or anything worth salvaging, you might at least be able to salvage something, but not after it's been burned to a smithereen. It's kind of joke. Now, the point of this, why am I discussing this? I'm going to add this to the files on Angela Ditchfield, because we've been arguing about immunity. We've been arguing about the right to petition and what you can and can't do and what you are protected and not protected for. And we've been talking about the Angela Ditchfield case where she painted a building and the fact that there are two entire acts of law, the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 and the Statutory Instruments 2007, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. And those two acts completely deal with the entire subject of placing advertisements in public, defining what an advertisement is and classifying them, and also defining where you're going to put it on and what you're going to use, right? And this includes Class C, which is using paint and painting it on buildings, which are the rules for that, and defining what an advert is, which is anything that gives notice of something, words, letters, symbols, a representation, theatrics, an act, speech. You could say a publicity stunt even. This is that's debatable what defines an advert, but and then Class E and F are for elections and referendums and voting, and Class E and F really come together, but they're two separate ones, but you use the enactment. F allows you to use any other law that is relevant to what you are doing. Now, when you're petitioning, you use the right to petition, which grants the immunity, right? And it confirms that by saying it knows that when you're using Class F, you don't need consent. You don't need to ask, deemed or express consent. You're exempted because the Act gives you consent. The Act gives you permission by consent of the Lords Spiritual and Temporal, and the consent of the Town and Country Planning Act in the opening part. So there are other laws you can use as well. Basically, it's your plug-in for what law you're using. But they know that in elections and they know that Class E is to do with political matters and voting. And it makes sense that Class E and F is for use of enactment, which, when you're doing voting and petitions, you use the right to petition, which is the immunity. So it's a no-brainer. Now, once that is taken into consideration, and the CPS did not take it into consideration, or the police, they chose to ignore it, because if they acknowledged it, they would have to acknowledge that it applies. It's better for them if they want to get a conviction. It was easy for them to completely and totally blank it, pretend it didn't exist, and then say, "Oh, we'll prosecute them for criminal damage." So they prosecuted Angela Ditchfield for criminal damage merely for painting a building. Yet they're not prosecuting all these companies for demolishing buildings when they don't have a right or permission. It's just a fine. So that is it's a good example of why really that immunity does apply to petitioning, and why really painting a building is not really that much of a serious matter. And even I'd go so far as to say, would someone have the right to protect this building, to protect these buildings? Would someone have the right to protect these buildings? Well, look at HS2 Rebellion. They are pursuing a political campaign to protect some trees. Now, if the trees get ripped out, then there's nothing there to protect anymore. So how far can they go to protect them? Well, that's the thing. If that Mark Kerr got a court order to stop HS2, but then they got the lawyers immediately straight away to quash it through the courts before you could blink an eyelid, seeing they're fully backed by the government. So, do you have a right to trespass to protect something from being demolished if you're pursuing a petition to stop it? Taking into account now that we know that petitions precede Parliament, they precede having a Parliament, they precede Parliament being formed and brought together, and you could even petition to get it dissolved, or even petition to hold a Parliament when they didn't used to have Parliament. And it precedes MPs being elected to represent us, so we don't have to do petitions, or at least we've got a human representative rather than just doing it on paper all the time. That's the point of MPs. And particularly referendums are meant to be overriding your MPs or councillors. Because remember that we elect them in the first place, and that's why we elect them to represent us. But these political parties have ended up taking precedence. So, it's really, I believe that the immunity and protection does allow you to trespass, at least if there's an active petition about it, and it's something like this. It's a good example, anyway, of where you would reason it in light of the fact that people are demolishing entire buildings, no matter if they own it or not, they don't have a right to demolish it all. They didn't have a right. These people have a right to immunity. Really, the building regulations are kind of giving, what they're doing is, rich people who have got loads of money who can afford to buy buildings have kind of really got an immunity that stops them being convicted of criminal offences. It doesn't stop them being fined, but the problem is that if you've got a lot of money and you're very rich, you can just keep paying the fines. It's almost like buying a license, when you've got to pay for a passport, 75 quid, or you've got to pay for your driving license or whatever. They're being given a very expensive license to be able to do it and get away with it without being called criminals. And through this way, they're just going around and doing what they want to the entire country. They're banging it. They're doing us. They're rugby tackling us and just having to pay a fine after, get a little referee whistle, but not getting a criminal conviction. Yet, when it comes to us, protesters, activists, people who are legitimately using political process, what's actually happening is they want to get a criminal conviction out of us. They want to stick a label on us. You're a criminal, and you're a criminal, and detain you in cells, treat you like a criminal, and even put them in prison. When it says, even in the Scottish version of the Bill of Rights, that you can't be imprisoned. So, and the fact that the police, who are paid for by us and the CPS, aren't upholding our rights, they're actually taking the side of the opposition and trying to brand us all as criminals. I haven't found any evidence at all whatsoever that Crown prosecutors, judges, or anyone else in the government has immunity. None. The only immunity that I've seen is the right to petition, and illegal prosecutions by the King's Bench for matters only decidable in Parliament, which is what you decide in Parliament is the matters we have brought to Parliament. We put them there. The ministers are our solicitors, really. It is the role and position of the advocate in Parliament, and the only thing they can advocate is the information that we lay with them. Now, when political parties took over in Parliament and people started forming political parties following the Cromwell period and later on, and all that's in Peter Ackroyd, Histories of England, Volume 3, they started wearing colours and sitting in groups. And then they get you to vote for their gang, their party, their whatever, their franchise, their company, and they forget that the people elect them to represent us, and that's the problem now. And they've got big plans, big schemes, big phases, big projects like this Stonehenge tunnel that the Secretary of State of Transport's obsessed with penetrating the ground in Stonehenge. At the odd time when they've got all these gender transitional issues going around in the news, and then they seem to be wanting to genderise the landscape around Stonehenge. And there was HS2, and then there's our ancient site as well, which, you know, one of them hasn't even been acknowledged for existing. It's been hidden and covered up in 1953 or 4. Perfectly timed with Queen Elizabeth II's coronation, and you know we know that the imperial chemical industry was banged there, and King George popped up at the signing, the opening day, signing the book, ruined the whole entrance to the valley, and then you know all of the controversy over our ancient site, which is similar to this pub here. It all adds up, but we're basically having our rights undermined by. Unfortunately, by these ministers. The opening part of the Bill of Rights is all about evil judges, councillors, and ministers. Therefore, that sets the subject, which is the misbehaving. When would they misbehave? When would they misbehave? Well, they misbehave when they prosecute us illegally. That's why the main and prominent clauses in that Act are all about illegal prosecutions. So it's about ministers, councillors and judges when they prosecute us unlawfully when they're not allowed to, which creates a wrongdoing. And it's labelled as, what is this identified as? It's in that Act, in the opening part, its title is a subversion of the fundamental laws and liberties of the kingdom. So who would subvert the laws and liberties of the kingdom? Well, judges, councillors, or ministers. And how would they facilitate that? Well, we would try to stop them doing from what they're doing by petitioning, and we would be subject to being criminalised for that. We're not allowed to be criminalised for that. Now, they're not criminalising all these people with these buildings. Now, who owns them? Who owns the buildings? And who bought them? And then who owns the shares in the companies that bought them? And then let's look at the model of ownership. And it's not easy for David Cameron and Tony Blair to calculate that as, oh, it's HS2 and Balfour Beat Me and Taylor Wimpey and the rest of the contractors and investors who the government are friends with, best pals. And look, here is a local executive on the local council. He's not allowed to make any money or profits from decisions made in government, because that would mean he'd have to step down. Because it says in many old acts of law that if anyone working on the council makes financial profit themselves out of decisions they make in the council by commissioning works, they have to step down. What is Rishi Sunak doing? He's making investments out of oil companies that he makes a lot of money out of by decisions that he passes through in Parliament with his party. And I won't be surprised if some of the oil that he's using gets used by JCB with their beep, 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 extremely loud standard fitting beeping noises, which annoy the hell out of you and bust your eardrums, like many of these McDonald's whistles and so forth that are perfectly tuned to annoy the hell out of you. You know, and so forth, and all the oil that they're using in these contracting enterprises. You know, what they're actually doing, this is the problem with the Conservative Party. They had a lot of members who, this is what Peter Osborne said from Double Down News. He said that the Conservative Party had a lot of supporters in the shires who like, you know, affluent areas with like historic, traditional interests, villagers, you know, like Winchcombe, Tewkesbury, you know, Cirencester, Stroud, you know, all through Wiltshire, Cornwall, the south, you know, Durham, Lake District, or not the Labour stronghold areas, unfortunately, which is what happened to our area. Used to be one of these shires until you know, until around the time that the Labour Party was invented, believe it or not, funnily enough. And then after the Labour Party was invented, a dark smog and pollution came over the land. So, you know, this is it. This is the whole thing, you know. Now, I am making this video, believe it or not, for Mike Parker Pearson, Professor Mike Parker Pearson, because I'm wanting to ask him to do something about this Stonehenge tunnel. I read that I thought he might have been for it, but it seems that he actually is kind of sort of against it, which I am. But the problem is that there is a lot of technicalities about the ownership of the land, the status of land, the different permissions around the land. It's very, very technical and complicated. But what we need to be looking at, what is technical and complicated, is the right to do something about it. And when we look at Professor Karen Barry's paper and the history of petitioning and Peter Ackroyd and read Peter Ackroyd's books, and we start to work out what the right to petition actually is and what our rights are, you know, we find that Parliament are really swindling us. They are conning us, tricking us. You'll petition them about 15-minute cities, like you want to stop 15-minute cities. I've got 2 pieces of evidence of that in the petition that I've put to Wiltshire Council. And then Parliament will say, the Petitions Committee in Parliament will say, oh, you know, you're not petitioning Parliament about this, go petition the local council. We refer it to the local council, right? But yet they can make legislation. You can have a petition to Parliament to stop 15-minute cities by changing the law, the rules around even being able to propose them, and, you know, you could easily make a law or a rule where the council has to first get the approval of a set number of people, not even a consultation, because consultations aren't really... so what I've read is they don't really have to abide by the consultation, but, you know, if they did a consultation that was a referendum consultation and it was a number of votes for and against, then it would be different. There are lots of things they can do to make it hard for them to have 15-minute cities in the law. And if you want to petition for that, you can. So what the Petitions Committee do is they play dumb and go, oh, we don't know how to do that. So if they can't be creative and think of a way to implement what you are asking, they'll say, oh, no, you know, we can't do it, or we don't want to do it. There is where there's a will, there's a way, right? You know, so they're trying to, they don't want to make it very hard for councils to have 15-minute cities everywhere. So they instead they say, oh, we don't know what you're asking, or they play dumb, and go see a local council. Because the Secretary of State doesn't want to make 15-minute cities hard or even debate it, because he likes them and he wants to try and encourage them. So they say go petition the local council or refer it to the local council. You know, just challenge your council on your 15-minute city, right? That's what they say. Now with Stonehenge, so when people submit Stonehenge petitions to the Petitions Committee in Parliament, so why aren't they therefore going, because we've got evidence now on those 15-minute city petitions, why aren't they saying, oh, Stonehenge, it's a Wiltshire issue, go see Wiltshire Council? Why don't they do that? Oh, it's Secretary of State. well, you go see Wiltshire Council first. Well, Secretary of State can do something about 15-minute cities, but he didn't want to go see the council. Why didn't Secretary of State do something in Parliament in a debate to stop 15-minute cities everywhere or make it very hard to get them? But, Stonehenge Tunnel, come to me, I'm just your man. In fact, I'm making all the decisions on the land governance. Really? Why don't you tell us to go see the local council first? Do a petition there. In fact, if the petition does well in the local area, could get a referendum on it like Stop Cop City in Atlanta. You only need 5% equal to the electorate to have it. Well, get the mace out. Oh, look, there's somebody walking out of Parliament with the mace. Put it down. Put it down as a speaker now. Order. Put the mace down. Stop walking out with it. I'm taking it to Wiltshire Council. It's the authority of the king. I'm taking this mace to Wiltshire Council chamber. I'm swapping it for the other one. I like it better. And by the way, will you take this petition with you as well, but for these 15-minute cities? But don't leave that Stonehenge one there on the table. Take the 15-minute city petition to Wiltshire. We don't want to have to debate all of the 15-minute cities in England. No. Take the Wiltshire Council. Leave the. I found a petition on Salisbury Plain, and the mayor of Salisbury sent it to Parliament. So they found nothing better to do than to burn it. That's a coincidence. I found over 200,000 signatures trying to stop Stonehenge Tunnel being built on Salisbury Plain. I'll amalgamate them together and send them into Wiltshire Council, because apparently they weren't supposed to go to Parliament. They were supposed to go to Wiltshire first. And then if the results of the referendum are not to the satisfaction of anyone else, then we can raise it to Parliament, and then we'll have a debate of all England. We'll have a referendum for all England. This is it. Why is it that before Parliament was invented, we were petitioning the king? And then when they invented Parliament, then we petitioned the king to hold a Parliament when we wanted to hold one. And then if we didn't want them to have one, we petitioned them to dissolve it or prorogue it. And why is it we elect MPs, to represent us, so we don't have to write it down on paper ourselves, so they can go represent us? This is it. Petitioning actually predates MPs and predates Parliament. This is the thing, right? So the Secretary of State for Transport, we'll have the Wiltshire Council referendum, seeing as we've got over 200,000 signatures, and they can check them all for us, seeing as that's what we pay taxes for. They can go through all the signatures and check them all to make sure there's over 26,000 or whatever, 25,500 or however many it is, 5% equal to the electorate. And we'll compel the entire population of Wiltshire then to be issued a notice from the council, and we'll switch the LED torch on and watch them all light up. This is it, and hopefully it won't turn into a Labour pit mine. This is the thing. So, I've specially made this for Mike Parker Pearson. If you read the Professor Karen Bowie paper, then you will see that petitioning does predate Parliament and take overriding over the MP's opinion when you get enough signatures. And that amount of signatures clearly take precedence overriding Wiltshire Council, on which they were entitled to have a referendum on it. And there should be a lot more local referendums in this country. It's rarely called, rarely used, but it exists and you've got a right to do it. Look at the Atlanta Cop City petition. But they do. The thing is, they've got petition sites on local councils, but it's hard to get it published, and they make you. It's a fiddle to sign it. It's a faff to sign it. And they don't really want people, they don't want citizens of the realm, they don't want His Majesty's subjects really to have too much interest in local areas. They want them to be distracted by football matches. If they have an interest in a local area, the greatest interest they want in a local area is when someone turns up for an Arsenal match. In fact, I might even send this to John Burkow. They want people to be interested in a local area when they are having a football match with John Burkow in the audience. Then everyone turns up and fills the stadium, right? But they don't want anyone to have an interest in an area all eyes on the area when it's something to do with Stonehenge or, any other facility that you might make use of, or if you own a business in the area. If there are any businesses left in the area that haven't been demolished, like all the old Liberal stronghold pubs with all the awards and memories on the walls of all the Liberal members, party members, except, all we remember is Churchill who defected. This is the thing. There are no Liberal pubs in our area because they all got demolished, likely by this treachery of what we've seen here with this crooked pub. The treachery, effectively they've got immunity. Who else can afford to buy all these buildings and demolish them unlawfully anyway, or not put the planning notices out and build a housing estate behind you because you didn't even know it was coming, and then 6 months of beep, 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 that you can't block. They've got immunity on that. The ability to harass people without being liable. There's another immunity. Builders, making harassing noises all day, and the council or police can't do anything about it. Another form of immunity there. So I say that it's about time that they will put up with their bank windows being smashed and Class C painting through Class F enactment on their walls, and forests being protected by HS2 protesters and so forth. Instead of, it's always pound notes, innit? If you pull a big wad of cash out, if you're a Tory and you pull a big wad of cash out, I'm a team player. Pass the wad of cash, your rugby team. What a shame. There goes the building. Crash. I wasn't supposed to do that. Oh, well, it's all gone now. Might as well carry on. Well, I'll have to pay a fine. This is it. No criminality. So this is what the right to petition is meant to protect against being criminalised, imprisoned or branded a criminal when you are pursuing a legitimate, archaic process. It's actually a legal process. It's actually proceedings that involve the public taking place. It is a proceedings like civil or criminal with a different and I've said this to the CPS right from the start. I clocked it straight away from the start. It's a legal process. It has a different form of proceedings to what the CPS are familiar with. Their little, police investigation, witness statements, summons, warrants, hearings, trials, sentencing, so forth. It starts with an investigation and a gathering of informations, and then asking the jury first in favour, and that is then, passed on to our elected advocates who are our MPs. But we don't need them. We used to have either a grand jury, 3 justices, or the London magistrates, if it's to Parliament, if it's not to the local courts, or the Lord of the Rolls. It ain't no Lord of Dogtown or the Mayor, I can tell you that. The Lord of the Rolls are, not the Lord Advocate, and then it's supposed to be debated in Parliament through to a getting with a realistic, possibility of getting laws made, changed, or an action like a public inquiry or whatever, whatever's on the menu, whatever you can have, and there is some debate over to what you can have and can't have, But then again, but they want to criminalise us for that. Even if we're engaging in rebellious behaviour, which is accounted for by Karen Bowie. Why did they enact? What were the events and engagements that were taking place before they decided to think up something like complete and total immunity? Well, apparently, rebellious activities in public, free speech, having secret meetings, speaking in relation to things that were going to be debated in Parliament eventually. Protecting things, investigating, gathering informations for such matters and so forth. So, I'm not claiming that people should be able to completely riot, like in France when they're, demolishing Macron's favourite restaurant or whatever. We're not talking about chaos. I've been getting someone to help me do this, and I don't think she's particularly the most favourable advocate for total complete immunity. But, I'm not an advocate of chaos. No one's an advocate of chaos. In France, what was happening was, if not on the borderline, over the borderline. But we're talking about things like HS2 rebellion, protecting a woodland while they're in pursuit of legitimately trying to do something about it, like with Mark Kerr, who was even getting court cases. How can you compete with the financial power of these contractors? How can you compete with their millions? And they can get people with not much money manage to get a court case in their favour, and then they're just taken straight out by these massive financial organisations that the government are behind. Boris with his hard hat on and so forth. In the civil and criminal procedurals, all parties are meant to be on an equal footing. And I've said this before, there's no equal footing anymore in advertising and promotion, when the majority of the public arena, the public domain, has been taken over. And I don't just mean by the fact that all the premises have been bought up by these big elite companies. I don't just mean that, JC Decor, all these private companies are using this massive buying power with all the money they've taken from all the workers. They've bought bus shelters, they've bought billboards, they've bought advertising boards, and they're getting all this planning permission to have them installed and fitted everywhere and anywhere, all down the pavement, all down the street, in the middle of the pavement, obstructing the pavement. Big light up ones now distracting you. They're taking over. And all that money that they've made profits out of us. And yet, if our government make any laws to try and curb these profits, then they sue them. But yet, they've been curbing our health. They've been curbing our health with the products they've been getting us addicted to and pushing on us and feeding to us. Yet, we can't sue them. Well, no one wants the NHS. Our government won't sue them for purposely, intentionally, sabotaging our health or causing a lot of health things. And now they've got another distraction with all this COVID thing and making it all compulsory. So what they're doing now, they've insulted our health, and to such an extent that now, instead of curing it by saving us from their products, now they're pushing more meds on us. Viruses are popping up, and they're saying, now it's all compulsory. Now we've given you the food and made you ill. Now we're going to make you take the medicine. And not actually to cure that, not to cure the cancers and, diabetics, just for extra additional stuff that's now going to be. It's despicable. We can see what's going on. We can see exactly what is going on. We can see clearly what is going on. And it's about rights. So effectively, what these people are doing is they've given builders immunities, all manner of immunities builders have got for not being criminal, for making harassing noises. And then I need to go on to the subject of the internet, of online, because they've even got us to kind of they've been trying to recruit people to be authoritarian like they are. They're giving us all these buttons. They're creating groups where we could potentially come together and oppose them. But what they do is they get admins, loads and loads and loads and loads of admins, and all these blocking and buttons. And now, even on the groups where you're trying to help people and oppose these authoritarian forces, everything's locked. Even the people on your side, they've got them, everything's got to be approved. Now, I can see that there might be obs on there or certain opposition characters in the groups putting, spin propaganda or whatever. You get a lot of them complaining on Just Stop Oil on the Facebook, not on YouTube, because they don't have comments on YouTube. But and I think that it's quite argumentative on there, but at least it's kind of like free speech. But a lot of the Facebook groups, people are just like trigger happy with the blocking and banning. And even when you're trying to help them, they can't see that now, some of them, or they don't get it. And these things I'm talking about now are the absolute solutions. Without going into the details of any particular matter, like, a particular case with particular land regulations and particular land rules, we're talking about overriding all that. It's a fundamental process that can override it by way of opinion, and they're not giving us that. They are. It's a diversion. What they're doing is they're diverting it to more difficult processes, which are a lot harder to achieve, because they know that in local council matters, if you can get people interested in it, you need a lot less number of people behind it, at least to trigger things like referendums, and that's what's happening. And they don't want us to use a democratic process. And the fact that if it's ancient sites and things like that, no one would have any interest in some village, I don't know, Johnny Groats or somewhere, right? It's hard to get interest in it. But if people suddenly start going on holiday there and, I like this place, or if there's an ancient site there, then people go there, there's an interest. There people would be interested in, what happens to it. Therefore, you can get people interested in the petition and ask them to sign it. Like Stonehenge itself, it has interest. This is what happens when you divert everyone underneath it with a tunnel. They can't see it anymore. The general public don't see it. And it might restore some of the natural landscape to it, but why just not divert the entire road away from it? Why dig a massive tunnel under the ground? Why just not take the road away, make the road go, far away? This is it. And where is all the traffic coming from Stonehenge? Where is all the traffic coming from? Well, in Wales, they're about to put a law through to ban all these horrible foods, all these bad foods. So you're going to get less traffic going to Wales from the rest of the country. Less delivery drivers going to Wales because they won't be delivering all these pops and sodas and ice creams and other things, right? So, and half of this traffic anyway, apparently the traffic's meant to have gone down because of, Royal Mail deliver things now. People don't go to the shops, Postman comes and collects everything. And the only traffic that we've got here is all night because of that much immigration that all through the night now, even on the countryside, there's cars coming past from 4 o'clock in the morning. Where are they coming from? They've suddenly started. I go out and I look. Who are these people? And without prejudice, foreign. Where are they all going? To work in a factory 24 hours. Where are these factories coming from? They got planning permission. Didn't the people in the local village object to it? Yes, multiple times. But the council and the contractors were obsessed with getting the new aeroplane engine company off the village, beautiful village, that objected to it multiple times. They finally caved in, when they'd had enough of, they just had exhausted. They couldn't defend it any longer. This is what happens. This is what they're doing. They've got so much money. It's like the Roman army. Where did they get all the soldiers from the Roman army? They paid them, right? So they're buying. Where are they getting all the lawyers from? Where are they getting all these people from? It's their staff. They're recruiting people through money. They're buying people, and from 9 o'clock till 5 p.m, they're working for whatever they're told to by the corporate enterprise. Now, why aren't people leaving these jobs? Why aren't people saying, we will not work for HS2, we will not destroy the forest, we will, you got these 100 lawyers who have pledged not to prosecute any protesters, with the Good Law Project, for example. Where are all the lawyers coming forward who are going to prosecute the CPS and so forth? The only reason that the MPs have immunity in Parliament is because they are carrying they're representing us, which means the information's laid is meant to be the informations we've elected them to represent. But what's happened is that's been hijacked by the political parties, by either Labour or Conservative. Now MPs believe that the only information that they are laying to Parliament is what the political party produces, which is like Keir Starmer. You know, the material that they're advocating in Parliament is meant to be the material that we laid to them. That's why we elected them. That's why we got them to form a Parliament and call it together, even when there wasn't one. After it had been dissolved. This is it. And the informations that we petition that is being produced and laid is meant to be our informations. They're trying our information that we gathered, that we laid, and that is being represented through the government to be enacted. That is the proceedings and procedure. And we are the people who laid it, or for each specific case. Now, it's true. There are many, many activities that have got nothing to do with that, like making sausages, right? Or cleaning the park, or whatever. But when you've got a specific case that you're claiming that case, the actions that you claim, the actions that you are claiming as a claimant, the actions that you are claiming, I am claiming these actions for this case. Now, either they are for that case or they aren't. First, get that clear. If it's easy to ascertain whether turning up at a football match for Arsenal with John Burkow has anything to do with protecting some standing stones in Cumbria, unless they're playing away, which I doubt it, because the Stone Circle in Cumbria, Castlereagh, doesn't have a football team. So you aren't likely to even have an eligible claim. And then we can talk about, if you've been naughty or not in regards to that with the people who are, dealing with it, which is like, these builders, they're not even being criminally convicted for this, destroying buildings. So there's a very strong case, at least, not to be treated criminally, Now, in the Magna Carta, it says lords and barons can only be fined by their equals. We take that for meaning having proceedings brought against them by their equals. But at least in Magna Carta, it says the word fines. In the right to petition, it says prosecution and imprisonment. Now, to me, if you want to argue about it, it doesn't say fines. So it's contestable whether you could be fined or not. But it definitely says that you can't be prosecuted or imprisoned. So at the very least, there is an argument for being treated, the same as, these builders who pull wads of money out and get magic immunity. But then again, this is the thing about harassment and so forth. Beep, 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 beep. Builders. I think the whole builders and contractors is the new model army. It is the new model army because they're the government's favourites. They're the government's favourites, and they even give awards out to independent builders and advocates. Now, no one's saying we don't need builders or like builders, but everything they seem to be doing seems to be what money's pushing, right? Not what people are, and a lot of the times it only takes 200 people in a village to say we don't want something, and then, if they could get more people interested in it, more people around the country might say, oh, let's have a look. Oh, I quite like that village as well. Maybe we should keep it. And then when everyone says that, then maybe they should. This is the thing. Who would have an interest in buying a property in Hartlepool on Shilling Street when no one knows it's there? No one would have an interest in it unless you had an interest in tasty cakes around England. I've got an interest in tasty cakes around England. It's like Mr. Kipling. Oh, if you've got an interest in cakes, I'm going to travel the land and see what cakes are around England. You'll have a sniff around. Oh, I found a new special little cake shop in Hartlepool. Oh, I'm going to go all the way there to buy some cakes because they're very tasty. I can do it if I can afford to. I've got an interest in cakes in Hartlepool, right? There are people, when Google Maps got formed, we thought it was great for research, but we didn't see the sharks on there like Dragon's Den, who weren't just hunting for the tastiest cakes in the land. they had a bigger addiction, which was buying buildings, and they didn't just want to buy them for their building collection and have them for show to look pretty. They didn't want to buy up all these beautiful old buildings around England just for their building collection. Oh, look at my shelf. I'm collecting porcelain models. Look at these. They're all beautiful. This one's an 18th century one. It's very old. Don't want to break that, and I'll get the insurance out for it. All these beautiful buildings around England, no, they weren't buying them up for their collection of beautiful buildings of England. They were buying them up to make a profit out of them, not just increasing in value by preserving it. Oh, this is a 1265 coin. If I keep this in my pocket and shine it up, it might be all right. No, they were doing more than house flipping. They were demolishing history, taking down history, changing the appearance of the landscape, twisting it to their own. It's effectively like going into a modernist. It's like basically getting the Mona Lisa or some paintings and saying, "Oh, these are crap," and this is not modern, and then just literally like out of Batman and Joker with the Joker. I've used that scene before on the film when when the Joker turns up and walks around and modernizes all the paintings with a bit of additional artwork, raising the value of them. No, you've written them off. This is it. There's a lot of money involved, but there could have been a lot of money involved in preserving things. But further than that, and this is why I'm going to take this further now, a lot of those buildings in our area in Kirklees were very old buildings and politically affiliated, like old liberal pubs and clubs, because it was a liberal area. And when Labour took over in 1800 and when it was formed and then it started spreading out, a lot of those buildings in our area were demolished, and I think that the evidence for that, George turning up with the Imperial Chemical Industries and, Elizabeth II banging the housing estate on our hill fort and so forth, they were removing things that were opposition to the Royalists and symbolised opposition to the Royalists and symbolised pre-conquest, celebrated pre-conquest, celebrated prehistoric times. I'm all for technology, but this technology, this is the thing. And at the end of the day, it's been financial money power that's pushing all this, not voting power. And when they can't make profits out of decisions, and when, this is it. I'd like to see what, the corporate elite would do if we just suddenly turned up and started, painting all their paintings, doing Andy Warhol upgrades to all their, old artwork they've got in their vaults, next to their bars of gold in their vaults, we're just modernising it, putting some extra value on it. They won't like it. And that's the thing. And a lot of these planning permissions reuse existing building. They haven't done. They've demolished it down to 2 bricks sticking up out of the floor. That's no building exists anymore. And there's been a lot of cheating going around it and so forth. And it's not just about making money. There is a political side of it, and it's that people aren't as aware of that because they haven't clicked on what's going on. And notice that, all the Balmoral, Sandringham, all the driveways of trees on lands and observatories and conservatories, all this history of a certain, either the Christian religion or the royals, all the memorials, all the statues, everything is, Sir this, Sir that, stone statues in churches and tombs, Sir this, Sir that. And all of the older ones, they set the archaeologists on them, tear them to pieces in the name of science and research. And I think they've been going a little bit further than they should have been, because there'll be devices in the future which can just scan all these without actually being non-invasive. Well, with being non-invasive, and just scan straight through all the soil. Any object that you want to find that's worth digging up, you'll be able to see it. And there are other finer memories in the earth, and scientists at the moment, this is the type of thing that they're researching in the Hadron Collider now, right? And I just don't think that the current archaeologists believe. They're not believers. And they're a little bit like they just haven't quite got the patience. They want it now. They want it now. We want to dig it up now. Or they want their name recorded on there. I want to be an archaeologist. I want my name on there. I found this on this date and so forth and so forth. They just haven't quite got the patience to wait for the technology to advance, where they can non-invasively scan it, and then they could discover all these things and find objects and probably extract them. There are more finer atomic and finite memories in the earth, and when you disrupt layers of it, even the top, I still think that the rain and the wind and the weather, I still think that certain material, undisturbed, there is certain memories in that, particularly in trees that have grown with all these waves going through them and the sunlight shining on them. It's effectively like the tiger. How has the tiger got the stripes? It's absorption of the light, and it grows into there. So it's a memory. The tiger's skin is a memory of these patterns around it. And trees will also have memories of objects that walked around in the landscape, because over hundreds of years and so forth, very, very finely detected and stored in the memory of the tree or even of the land. And this is why I get really upset about them disturbing it, particularly around these ancient sites, because if they disturb all of it, then you'll disrupt the stored memory. And I know that solid objects are real, an actual solid piece of memory that's solid and can be actually held. But I just don't think that the archaeologists are believers that there is even more to scan and find. And the more and more you disrupt, the more and more that it's going to erase that memory, like erasing it from a magnetic cassette tape, you know? Maybe even in the stones as well themselves, but particularly in the landscape. But, you know, that would be hard to convince them. And, you know, I don't think that they want to hold back or try to at the moment. But that's my only kind of dispute with the archaeologists. But, you know, I think with Stonehenge that there's a secret, you know, objective that they're hoping that they're going to find some things under the ground when they dig the tunnel, lots of things, you know. Why don't they just say that? You know, why are they making up excuses for a road, you know, rather than it could be the biggest disguised archaeological dig ever, but it's raping the landscape, you know. And at the end of the day, I don't think that one minister, a Secretary of State of Transport, should make the decisions on that. I think that the people of Wiltshire should get to vote on it. And even if the vote goes one way or another, if people aren't satisfied with that further, then I think that everyone in England should have a referendum on it. I think Stonehenge is quite important. It's like meant to be the Temple of the Sun. They call it the Temple of Apollo, following Howard Crowhurst's latest videos, which are amazing. And for that reason, I think that it's as a monument, I think that everyone in England should vote on it. Certainly not the Secretary of State for Transport, who is he's like the arch enemy. He's the worst minister out of all the ministers, because he is like the champion. He's like the special character of all of all of JCB. All of this whole thing, all of the builders' arse cracks, JCB, all of the contractors, all of the planning cheating that's going on. He's like it's like on The Lord of the Rings, one of the ring wraiths, like the Secretary of State for Transport. He's like one of the main bad guys, you know, and he shouldn't decide on any of this. You know, he needs to go to the people of Wiltshire. 200,000 signatures is more than enough for a local referendum. They should have been when they were handing in those signatures, they should have sent them to Wiltshire Council straight away and said you can vote on it. That's what should have happened. I don't care if they've had a debate on it in the chamber. So what? There are still petitions that are being made now on it, you know. So and according to the history, petitions are meant to override you know, the ministers are meant to carry the petitions with them. You know, I think Nigel Farage just got 300,000 signatures to keep cash because they didn't want to scrap cash because they're going on digital. But anyway, I'll send this to Mike, but you know, I don't know what his opinion is going to be, but I would hope that I've written the petition out, right? And it doesn't matter if it's that one or another one, but I think that, you know, we've got a right for Wiltshire to have a referendum because and I don't think the government want people to click that you can have local referendums, and really then that not had to have. And if you can generate interest in an area, look, right, if you're wanting to stop someone building a co-op, right, you're unlikely to generate interest or care, right? People aren't too interested in co-ops in England. You're unlikely to gather interest. If it's something of right privilege or interest, then the more interest there is, then the more people support you've got, and the more likely that you can challenge the local people and say, look, this is important there are a lot of people with interest in this, so we want to be a referendum on it. And if it's not resolved after that, then we'll you know, attempt to get more people interested, and then, you know, we might be able to get one for all of England.